We have arrived at the final link in the chain, and the final video in this series and of this format. The previous episodes have laid the ground bare. Ordinary polity has failed. The legislature is captured and feckless. The judiciary has become a revolutionary force, rewriting law through fiat and living document sorcery. The militia is neutered. Secession is suicidal. Nullification is crushed in court. Lower magistrates are isolated, infiltrated, or powerless. The Republic faces existential threats on every front, and the revolutionary apparatus, both domestic and foreign, needs only one decisive victory, while we must block every thrust perfectly. There remains one office with the unitary authority, the oath, and the constitutional tools to act decisively. The presidency, the highest magistrate in the land, the last functioning link in the eternal chain. The founders did not design the executive to be weak in crisis, they designed it to be energetic. Article 2 vests the executive power in a single president for a reason: swift, decisive action when the Republic demands it. But the deepest warrant lies in Article 4, Section 4. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. This is not a passive promise. It is an active, affirmative duty. The federal government, led by the president, must guarantee that every state retains a republican form of government, not a democracy, a republic. Not identity politics, robbery of the treasury, and endless graft. A republic, where the people are secure in their rights and possessions, and the politicians are secure in nothing absent their obedience to godly ethics and just law. The distinction is everything. The founders feared democracy as mob rule, and as evidenced by the Athenians, as factionalism run amok, where temporary majorities or organized interests tyrannize minorities, whether that be financial, skin pigmentation, or ethno-nationalistic minorities, where identity politics and class warfare replace deliberation and the common good is crushed. Madison warned in Federalist 10 of factions that would sacrifice to its ruling passion or interest both the public good and the rights of other citizens. They built a republic precisely to oppose this. Representative government with checks against direct popular passions, bounded by transcendent law, protecting minorities from majority oppression and majorities from manipulated frenzy. Over the last century, that republican form has been overthrown. Democracy has become the watchword of the revolutionary order, a word the founders used sparingly and always negatively. It has been substituted for the constitutional republic through progressive subversion, judicial fiat, and bureaucratic capture. Factionalism now reigns. Identity politics pitting groups against each other, endless appeals to majority will that mask elite manipulation a la philosopher kings, policies driven by temporary coalitions rather than enduring principles. The result is not the founders' system. It is something else. It is something illegitimate, oppositional to the Republican guarantee itself, and flouting the American founding and the blood spilt for that posterity. When the Republican form is manifestly lost to this revolutionary democracy, Article 4 imposes a duty on the president to restore it. This guarantee legitimates forcible intervention, even replacement of state governments that have devolved into factional tyrannies or been captured by revolutionary forces. It authorizes the president to use whatever means necessary: military deployment, suspension of rebellious officials, reformation of electoral processes, to re-establish republican order in the states. And it extends upward. The federal Leviathan itself, when captured by the same factional democracy, falls under the same duty. The president, as the unitary executive, must reform or purge the federal apparatus to fulfill the guarantee nationwide. This power is inherent in the president's role as chief magistrate and commander-in-chief. It does not depend on congressional delegation or statutory limits. The duty to suppress domestic violence and guarantee republican form flows directly from the constitutional text and the transcendent ethic that animates it. The judiciary's claim to absolute supremacy, rooted in Marbury versus Madison's self-asserted judicial review, has no constitutional warrant as final and unreviewable. It amounted to a subtle coup not to be fully realized for 200 years. The founders never intended the court to be secular prophets, Pharisees adding to the law while ignoring the foundations, upsetting constitutional order through redefinition and fiat. Jefferson rejected it outright. Lincoln, in his first inaugural, warned, "If the policy of the government upon vital questions affecting the whole people is to be irrevocably fixed by decisions of the Supreme Court, the people will have ceased to be their own rulers. Jackson defied Worcester versus Georgia. The president retains coordinate authority to judge constitutionality in his sphere, especially when judicial rebellion aids the overthrow of Republican form for damnable revolutionary democracy. The penetration runs deeper still. Legislative and bureaucratic branches are no longer legitimate in the eyes of the people or God. Foreign enemies, China, Russia, Qatar, and nominal allies alike, such as Britain and Israel, have embedded influence through bribery, blackmail, honeypots, and ideological capture. Domestic agencies operate with divided loyalties. The uniparty consensus serves these masters, while the Republic hemorrhages in the public square for all to witness. When magistrates abandon their oath to transcendent law and serve revolutionary or foreign ends, constituting malicious and aforethought attacks on the American citizenry, they forfeit legitimacy. The highest magistrate must interpose. These are just some of the grievances that justify the charge, drawn from the present crisis, echoing the founders' own indictments. The circumvention of law to fund dangerous pathogen research with enemy states, followed by mandates and censorship and medical meddling and manipulation that crushed livelihoods and worship, and caused the deaths of perhaps 1 million Americans. Anti-energy and regulatory policies that threaten food supply, freeze families, and erode freedom of movement while lining the pockets of both the Chinese and American politicians. Endless unnecessary foreign wars without declaration, laundering wealth through foreign proxies to enrich the corrupt. A surveillance censorship regime that abolishes privacy and partners with tech cartels to silence dissent. Currency debasement theft, and coming digital controls that pauperize families and prepare social credit tyranny and totalitarian control. Weaponized justice that revictimizes citizens while releasing predators, targets political prisoners with gulag conditions, and wields the sword only against the righteous. Incessant infringements on arms and attacks on the founding vision of decentralized militant capacity and turning righteous defense of the innocent into crimes. Indoctrination and grooming of children into revolutionary ideologies, sexual perversion, cultism, and severing family bonds. Welfare and tax schemes that abolish the family unit and indenture the productive while incentivizing fatherlessness. Election manipulation, insider corruption, and targeting of dissidents through lawfare and leaks. Alien invasion, perhaps to the tune of 50 million illegitimate persons on United States soil, economically and electorally replacing native-born and generational Americans, targeting those of European descent in particular, and loosing hand-picked violent foreign hordes to terrorize us. The list is long, but the pattern clear. A revolutionary overthrow of Republican form through factional democracy, foreign penetration, and moral collapse. It's the totality of the works of Plato brought to life. The president's tools are both constitutional and warranted by transcendent ethic. Article 4, Section 4, active duty to restore Republican form, authorizing forcible replacement of captured state regimes and federal reformation, using inherent powers to suppress domestic violence threatening the guarantee. Article 2, executive power and commander-in-chief, full control of military and agencies for decisive enforcement against factional rebellion. Oath of office, defend the Constitution's republic against all enemies. Coordinate review, reject judicial supremacy where it aids overthrow. Declarations warrant. When all redress fails, reform under higher law. These enable ethical transcendence of apparent bounds. Eroded constraints, congressional gridlock, judicial stays, are foils when Republican form is lost. The highest magistrate acts with means necessary for efficacy and justice. Secure borders, purge compromised elements, restore electoral integrity, reassert transcendent limits. To execute this charge effectively, tactical measures are essential. Preemptively federalize the National Guard in rogue states, relocating them to harmless postings while deploying loyal volunteer guard units or active duty forces to the power centers of subversive locales. This secures control without immediate escalation. Foreign intervention is certain. The international communist bloc, China, Russia, the EU, and Latin American socialist states will attempt military, economic, cyber, or asymmetric interference to prevent restoration of the Republic and throwing off the chains of slavery, as the destruction of America's Republic has been their mission since inception. Deterrence requires clear declaration. Any asymmetric action will meet American-fomented domestic revolutions in their nations or overwhelming conventional retaliation. These measures are not sought lightly, but as the minimum required to prevent greater bloodshed and secure restoration without protracted civil war, which these enemies have a great interest in inflicting upon us. Calculated targets for deterrence and execution if deterrence fails include China, Three Gorges Dam, catastrophic flooding and power loss crippling central China, major ports, Shanghai, Ningbo for economic collapse, key command centers, semiconductor facilities, and undersea cable landing stations. Russia, National Defense Management Center in Moscow, decapitating command, oil gas infrastructure and pipelines, economic strangulation, key rail bridges, energy grids, and undersea cable nodes. EU, primarily financial and cyber targets, Frankfurt banking hubs, Brussels institutions, swift disconnection threats, withdrawal of all military support, NATO commitments suspended, engineered energy crises through LNG cutoff and pipeline sabotage proxies. Latin America, Cuba, Venezuela, Mexico, Brazil. Havana command facilities and ports, Caracas oil refineries and PDVSA headquarters, key Mexican infrastructure under foreign influence, Brazilian energy dams and ports. It should be made clear that standing in the path of our efforts at reformation are existential and implicate the full measure of American military might in deterrence. This is not vengeance, it is restoration, peace under ordered liberty, not factional tyranny. It is not illegal, as he who saves his country breaks no law. The chain's last link stands ready, may God grant a magistrate to wield it. Counterspell Group